4, we're moving away from the central nervous system, which was that brain and spinal cord, and now we're going to move into the sensory division. So these sensory receptors is where we're going to start. So we're going to basically take the sensory receptor and we're going to take the sensory information, move it through the central nervous system up to our cerebral cortex where we'll actually perceive that. So we'll start at the sensory receptor, see what a sensory receptor actually is, what it does, and how that's going to help us take this information to the brain. So what is a sensory receptor? It's a neural structure that responds to a stimulus. So it's this modified neural tissue that's going to respond to a stimulus. So what's a stimulus? A stimulus is any form of energy. So we have different types of energy. We have these different forms of mechanical energy like pressure, touch, vibration. But we also have these different forms of energy like chemical energy from our food, electrical energy, all these different forms. Light energy. We can talk about heat or thermal energy. So a sensory receptor is going to take whatever this form of energy is, all of these things over here, and it's going to convert it into electrical energy. So we know our body runs off electrical energy, these action potentials, which are just these movement of these charged ions across membranes. So our body runs off electrical energy. So this conversion of any form of energy to this electrical energy, we call this transduction. So we transduce one form of energy, transduce or transduction. Converting one form of energy into this electrical or another form of energy. Okay, so sensory receptor, modified, responds to stimulus. We went through some different examples of energy, and then this conversion of one form of energy to another form of energy is called transduction, or to transduce the stimulus. So a stimulus, to get us to an action potential, that stimulus has to be strong enough, it has to reach that threshold. So we know a stimulus will cause a graded potential, and when we talked about graded potential, we talked about how these can be generator potentials or postsynaptic potentials. So since we're at these sensory receptors, we're talking about these generator potentials, these graded potentials. But graded potentials can either be depolarizing or hyperpolarizing. We need depolarizing generator potentials to lead us to an action potential. If you want to, you can go back to those muscle lectures and we get into all these different sort of action potentials. So sensory receptors, they're going to lead to but don't directly provide themselves sensation and perception. And I'll show you what we mean by that. So what is the difference between sensation and perception? If I draw my brain here and I come down my spinal cord, and then let's say from the spinal cord we go off into a hand, and that hand has a sensory neuron here, and then in that spinal cord we have an inner neuron going up to the thalamus, and from the thalamus to the cortex. So we need to take this information from a sensory receptor all the way to the cortex to perceive something. Sensation just occurs once we activate the sensory receptor. So that's the difference. Perception is a cerebral cortex function. Sensation just means that you're activating the sensory receptor. So you sense things or you perceive things.